Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of It's Brewin at McEwen, a USF Baseball podcast. I'm your host, Mark Giardino, and I'm joined today by one of my co-hosts, John Kaplan. John, how are you doing today?
We are doing well. 3-2, I think, since we last spoke to you guys, but got a lot to talk about. It's going to be a fun show.
Yeah, definitely. Matt and Adam ran into some tough technical difficulties trying to record earlier in the week. But it actually works out okay because this actually is kind of indicative of what our future format is going to look like. We want to get back on that schedule of recording twice per week with a show early in the week to recap the weekends, later in the week to recap the midweeks, look ahead to the weekends. And so what we're going to do today is try to do a little bit of all of that, but a little bit more streamlined version. But going forwards, you should expect to see twice per week. Usually Monday and Thursday is kind of what we're looking at doing. But as John mentioned, since our last recording dropped, the Bulls have actually played 5 games. So today is actually Wednesday, March 4th. And last night, the Bulls defeated Stetson by a pretty wide margin. I believe it was 12 to 4, 12 to 3, 12 to 4, yeah. And before that, obviously, we had the big series win over UCF out there in Oviedo. And then I believe it was a Tuesday before that, we did lose on the road to Bethune-Cookman in a close game. I don't know what it is about that team. I think it's the second year in a row we've lost out there.
Yeah.
I will say that team has definitely been improving a lot the last few years, and they were in the NCAA tournament, so nothing really to be too ashamed about. Played pretty competitively. Um, but yeah, so I mean, for today's show, what we want to talk about is we'll do a recap of the UCF series. We'll recap the Stetson game. We'll look at the AAC Power Rankings that Adam is kind of in charge of within our team of putting together different stats and different factors to weigh to come up with the power rankings for the conference. And if you haven't seen on Twitter, it's getting a lot of interesting feedback from fans of different fan bases. So check out Adam's post. Yeah, what you got?
And to be clear, the mastermind behind the graphics is obviously Matt. Adam is not very graphic handy, so Matt's got to get his flowers too,
And
for
there's a
sure.
lot of teamwork going on here. We got Adam coming up with the rankings. We got Matt making the graphic, and we got you and I talking about it. So
Yeah, let's
that's
do it.
it's a big team effort. But we will actually quickly mention at the end of the show the upcoming games for USF, who they're playing next, and then we'll wrap it up from there. But I think a great way to start the show today is to talk a little bit about the UCF series. So I'll kind of lay the land here. Obviously, this was supposed to start on Friday night back there on February 27th, but there was a rain out of Friday night's game. So instead, the Bulls and Knights played a doubleheader on Saturday with the first game starting at 1 p.m. And that was a really nice start to the series for the Bulls. Ended up having USF win that game 9-2. It was a really great way to see the guys come out in a rivalry matchup that we have struggled with the last few years. I believe it was our first series win over them since 2023. Um, yeah, I remember last year I attended some of the games from the matchup when UCF came to Tampa. I believe we lost that series 2-1. But it was great to see the guys jump jump out early on top of UCF. I think after 5 innings we were leading 5-2. After 6 innings we were leading 9-2. So really a great start. John, I know you got an opportunity to catch that game, and so as we talk about this first game here against UCF, what are some of your first impressions and thoughts?
Yeah, so I think that last week I was talking about how UCF hasn't really shown us a lot. Um, for good reason, we gave them their flowers preseason. We knew that they're gonna put a ball club together and they're gonna bring the heat, and we know that they can pitch, but If you look at the team that they had last season versus this year, I think a huge glaring difference, Mark, is their ability to hit for power. Their team was very quick, very fast. Um, they had some decent arms, but honestly, I think that we let a sweep get away from us personally, and the better team won the series. Um, so as far as game one, like you just said, we had a rain out on Friday. We were supposed to get that weather on Saturday, but it moved in quicker than expected. But game one, we had Edwin Alisea. He dominated. Um, there was one bad inning where he ran into some trouble. He gave up two walks. I think it was in the second inning. He gave up two walks, and then he had a fielder's choice that brought in a run, infield single that brought in a run, and then I think it was a sac fly, and that was all of the run production. No, that it was just those two runs, but
Yeah.
none of them were earned um, on the stat line, and he went 6 innings, which is another great quality start. 100 pitches, pitch to contact, and I want to adjust my MLB comparison from Dontrell Willis to Sean Manaea. He really impressed me this week, and I really think that he kind of reestablished his stake as a Friday night starter for us, or I mean, in this case, Saturday afternoon. But uh, also, what I noticed was early in triple, staying hot with the bat. They both had three RBI days. There were four Bulls with multi-hit games, and one thing that's not getting talked about enough. I mean, and this will improve as the season goes on. Is Will Allen, man, another dominant showing. Two appearances this season, both out of the bullpen. First was against North Dakota State, and then most recently against UCF. But on those in those two appearances, he's gone 4 and 2/3, given up two hits, no runs, only one strikeout. For his size, he does not throw very hard, so that's got to be kind of confusing. He is funky to watch, but I really love it. And he's a freshman, and we that's another theme we can talk about on another show, man. How many freshmen are just putting on for this team, which is amazing. Those are my big game notes, without spending too much time on teams that don't matter. So. Is there anything else from game one that you saw, Mark?
Yeah, I thought that Edwin Alisea again shows his resilience as a pitcher because I think early in the game he was struggling a little bit with his control, and that did
He
lead
was,
to that did lead to that two-run inning in the second. However, as I watched his afternoon progress, his control got better as his start went on and he's showing why he profiles as a Friday night starting pitcher, a potential pro, because he does have three pitches that he can use confidently. His fastball, which I think is actually a sinker, but then also a changeup and a sweeper type curve type of thing. But I think he uses all three of those effectively. I think especially his changeup is really nice, and I think when his the X factor with him is control because once he was in control and wasn't giving out free passes, his actual stuff is hard to make solid strong contact with, and that's evidenced by only 4 hits there for UCF, which came into the weekend as a pretty good offense. And another note is Caden Smith came out of the bullpen and for 1/3 of the inning to get the last out, and he was able to make an appearance later in the weekend, which was great. Um, I think we had a couple little fielding things. We had like 2 errors in this game, which is pretty rare for us. We're one of the higher fielding percentage teams in the league at like 981. So luckily that happened in a game where we already had 9 runs, which is good. But other than that, I just think it was a great start to the series. You jump all over the guy that Braden Smith, who had been pitching pretty well for UCF, who transferred in from a Division two for them. So to kind of do that to their Friday night pitcher, I think was pretty discouraging for them.
he
But
looked stunned. He looked
yeah,
he looked like a deer in headlights. He was like, "This isn't supposed to be happening."
right. We got 9 hits on him. I mean, yeah. So that was great. And but no, I think that's kind of it for that first game there. We can kick it to the second game in which it started at 5:10 p.m., just about an hour after the first one ended, and it had a much different game flow than the first game of the day. This one was a very low scoring pitchers duel. Credit to our guy, Michael Sine, who really did a great job. Another thing that was very clutch within this game was senior second baseman Brad Keylori getting a single there in the 10th inning, RBI to give us the go-ahead run. Um, Eli Thomas, the freshman, had a double that also gave us the tying run in the ninth inning. So some clutch, timely hitting there to get this. This game was huge because this was like, okay, you win this one, you battled, you spent all this time, battling back and forth, putting up zeros, ones and ones, and it's like, even though you won by 7 runs in the first game, it doesn't matter if you lose by 1 run in this one, it's like, the series is split, still up in the air going into Sunday. Instead, we clinched the series the same night by winning this game 2-1. But John, what are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, man, I was just really stoked that we were able to go into Sunday with the series win. That's got to be a weight off our back a little bit. And uh, going into the weekend, you're fired up for a rivalry weekend, war on I-4. You get there Thursday night, the night before, you're revved up and ready to play on Friday, and you get told, "Oh, we're not playing," So you come out Saturday cold, and I think our depth really played a huge key role in being able to, get through 18 or I'm sorry, 19 pretty difficult innings, for different reasons. Game one and game two had a completely different script. But let's get to game two. Michael Sine. This kid, I have been high on him, pretty much all season. He's a kid from Orlando, went to East River High School. Is working. I think he's pitching for the juniors for Team Czech. And he, the kid's just like stoic out there, man. Like he looks like nothing touches him. Nothing flusters him or bothers him at all. This is second dominant start after coming out of the bullpen against Illinois opening weekend, where he threw like I think like 4 innings, 5 innings. But he went 7 innings, 4 hits, no runs, 5 Ks, 1 walk, and kept it at 80 pitches. That's his second start where he's gone 6 plus, which is huge for Hanos. He loves that. And all of those were less than 90 pitches. He's super efficient. He keeps it simple. He hits his spots. He mixes it up. And he's a freshman. You know, he's already got velocity, but imagine like think about some of the players from the past that we saw come up and those velocity jumps, and they didn't even have the talent that someone like Sine has. So, really excited for him. You'll notice that a lot of this is about the pitching because we didn't get any offense until the eighth inning. Ethan Sutton, another guy that I was just really high on, um, am really high on. He kind of got back on the right side of the stat sheet, going 3 innings of one hit baseball, no runs. He did or no earned runs. He did have an unearned run because he literally botched this throw to first base. It was ugly and it was forgettable. But one thing that I want to say, and Adam, this may start a little rivalry between Adam and I. Um, we're gonna call it King of the Suburbs versus Phone Home. Adam is huge on ET, and for good reason, dude. The kid's a five-tool stud. But Jack Lutz has something to say, and he's king of the suburbs for natural reasons. 3 for 3. He didn't have an RBI, but he had 3 singles on the day. The dude is so smooth in the corner too, Mark. His glove is so smooth. His feet work is so good. His arm, he has a freaking cannon. I'm Team Lutz moving forward, and I
And
think
I want to say for our listeners that are not Tampa locals, the suburb reference is Lutz is probably one of the nearest suburbs to Tampa.
Yep.
but I think it is apropos, and he's definitely the king because he's been playing really well, especially in the past week.
Yeah, he's a freshman out of Wisconsin. How we're recruiting in Wisconsin, only Mitch Hannahs knows and his staff. But uh, that's really those are my big three. I'm trying to keep it short for the UCF series. But what did you see in game two of that on Saturday, Mark?
Yeah, I think that it's so interesting that we actually did have 11 base hits, which usually is pretty good. But to only get 2 runs and not score until the ninth inning is a little surprising. However, luckily a really solid pitching performance kept us in that game. But we did have of the 11 hits, 2 were extra base hits, and I think that is one theme that I do see with this team
Mm-hmm. Gap to
that
gap.
I would like to see improve as the season goes on, as we continue to play better competition, is we will have to get a little bit more into extra base hits. Even our home run total is still at only at 4, which I looked that up today, puts us about 250th in the country out of about 320 teams. So although we are scoring runs and we are playing very effective baseball, which I'm thrilled about, I do think that's something to monitor throughout the season is can we get a little bit more extra base hit? Can we get a little more extra base hits? It doesn't necessarily have to be home runs, but I think, when you see a game in which you have 11 base hits, but you only score 2 runs, I think that is a factor is not getting that level of extra base hits because ultimately that's going to lead to more bases, more opportunities to
I
advance
wanna
bases. Go ahead.
want to play devil's advocate here. I think the only relevant part of that is the fact that we only have 4 home runs because I'm looking at the AAC website here because I wanted to see what you were talking about, and um, we're number two in doubles and tied for first in triples. But as far as home runs, there's only two other teams, East Carolina and Florida Atlantic, with single digit home runs on the year. So that's going to be something to monitor. But when you said one thing you noticed, I honestly thought you were going to say that even though we're not hitting the long ball, I think we are hitting gap to gap. Like you've got those players like Early and Relaford and even Triple now. Triple doesn't hit singles, so it's like I feel like it's a pretty exciting team and it's kind of like doing it the long way. But man, I love to see it because I love to see teams put innings together and play station to station and play smart, calculated baseball.
Yeah, no, trust me, I agree. I just think that 4 home runs is something to monitor. I think it's more of a home runs thing
Absolutely. Yeah.
because another stat that I like in baseball is the isolated slugging percentage, just the difference between your team
Yep.
slugging and your team batting average. It gets an indicator of how often you are getting extra base hits, and that includes home runs, triples, and doubles. And our isolated slugging, I don't know the exact number, but it is a little bit low compared to where we usually are at. Um, but that's mostly driven by the lack of home runs. You're right. If we are up there on doubles and triples, then it really is. Because think about it, that's 4 bases for your total that goes towards your total bases. So it's just something to monitor. Um, and one thing I will say, I don't know the whole story. I don't know exactly what's going on, but we do have somebody on our roster, Juan Correa, who does have 28 home runs in his career at the Division One level. He had, I want to say, like 15 or 16 at Appalachian State last year, which is in the Sun Belt Conference. So even last night with Stetson, we did see a couple names of guys who hadn't been playing that often get some opportunity. So I wonder if he is somebody who may get more opportunity if we feel if the coaching staff does feel the need to bring a little more pop or power into the lineup. I mean, obviously we're 10-3, we're scoring runs effectively. If it's not broken, don't fix it. But I just think it's something to monitor that you do have a kid who's a senior who has hit 28 career Division One home runs, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets some more opportunities at some point in the future, unless there's an injury or something we don't know about. But I wouldn't be surprised if he gets more opportunities at some point.
Didn't he start opening night and then we haven't really seen him since? Because I think him and Early alternated game one and game two of Illinois, and then Early came in for game three. But I don't remember, and this isn't a knock. Like I don't remember seeing him much since that Illinois
Yeah,
series.
he's got like 8 at bats, I think, for the season. So I can't remember exactly when he came in. Like maybe a midweek he got to start as well. But it's just something to monitor.
For sure.
But so again, we scored 2 runs, which was enough to win this game. However, we'll skip it to the next game, and we kind of struggled all around in this game offensively. We only had 3 hits on the day. We ended up losing that series finale by a score of 2-1. So yeah, with this game that we lost 2-1 against UCF on Sunday, again, like I mentioned, the offense kind of sputtered here. You want to see your team, obviously the most important thing is to win a series, but anytime you have opportunity to sweep, you want to see putting as much fight into that as possible. And I feel like we did, especially from a pitching standpoint. But the offense kind of sputtered in this game. And UCS pitcher for the day, his name was Joey Trombley. He was a transfer, I think, from some other Division One or something like that. But he didn't really impress me that much. I just think that we just kind of had an off day offensively. He had 4 strikeouts and 3 walks against us. We only had 2 hits off of him. So that's just one thing. Another thing is the positive side here is Landon Urek pitched extremely well. He pitched 6 1/3 innings. He had no earned runs allowed, 2 strikeouts, 1 walk, and then Caden Smith came out of the bullpen and pitched pretty well for us as well, other than giving up 1 earned run, which did end up result in being the losing run. However, with our offense only scoring one, not too much to really criticize. But you have any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I not really. I mean, it was a tough loss that happens in baseball. I think we had our chance. We had multiple chances. Frustrating result, but we move on, But one thing I will say is 11.7 is a podcast we follow pretty closely. They do great work out there, and I will say that Noah was the only one to pick us in the War on I-4 pick 'em for that we were one of the 6 preview or pick 'em games. So shout out to Noah, Ben, and Dimitri. Get your weight up.
No, I agree. And apparently Noah's the only one there that really, really, really knows ball.
Yep.
So good for him. So that's kind of it on the UCF series. We also are going to talk about the game last night against Stetson, which Stetson has kind of been a thorn in our side lately as well. So I think we played them a little better last year, but I know my first several years covering with Brewin, they were always really hard for us. But the Bulls end up winning 12-4 at home. Bulls had 9 hits, turned that into 12 runs. Better hit to run conversion there. I think that was helped out by Stetson walking us 9 times.
Yeah.
But that is nice. Some highlights of this is the fact that we had a few different pitching performances, kind of like a semi bullpen day. The most that anybody did was 3 innings. That was Nolan Bernard out of the bullpen. 3 innings, 1 earned run. Bryson Tweedy got the start, 2 1/3. And other than I think the first inning where he gave up some runs, he looked pretty solid. And Dominic Pontbriand, 2 2/3, no earned runs, was able to work around 6 hits allowed, so that was good. Jorge De Cardenas, 1 inning, no runs. Offensively, there was a lot of standouts, but John, I'll let you give your thoughts quickly on the pitching side of this game.
Yeah, I don't want people who, and including myself, I wasn't real familiar with Tweety, but I was able to watch his start, and I don't want people to run away with that result. He ran into some trouble in his first inning. I think it was he hit his first batter. Um, and they led the ASUN last year in stolen bases. Stetson did, and so the kid he hits, of course, the laws of baseball are going to say he's going to get a free bag on you as well. He steals second, then a single, then a two RBI triple, then a sac fly, and before you know it, you're down 3-0. And for me, what makes a much bigger impact. And I think that Hannah's is the same way on this is how he responded to adversity. He gave up one hit after that in the rest of his outing. And mind you, I mean, it was only an inning and a third, but the hit was only an infield hit. And he looked poised. Actually, he passed the eye test for me when I saw him go down like that early because it is easy to tuck your tail, especially on a as a freshman on a team who is second in the American so far in team ERA, and one of our strengths seems to be pitching this year thus far. That is real wood, not faux wood, for those listening. But yeah, I think that you did a good job. Nolan Bernard also 3 innings, 2 hits, one earned. Um, the walks for Nolan ran him into some trouble, but then you saw the Nolan we're all getting to know where it almost looks like he gets a little angry, you know. He kicks it into a new gear and he left the bases loaded 1 inning. He's irreplaceable on this roster, man, and he's so exciting. We're seeing the progressions, Mark, dude. It's so exciting to watch. Uh, but yeah, no, Matt Rose with the start on the offensive side of the ball early with 2 for 4 with two ribbies. Matt got 2 hits and an RBI, and then Rutherford. He only has one hit on the day, but he was 1 for 1 with two walks and two RBIs, and his hit was huge. Um, Stetson is a renowned program. I grew up going to their baseball camps. You know, I love their stadium. We go there later this year. But some say yes, some say nine. This was the game in nines. It was 9 hits, 9 walks, 9 RBIs. But we got the job done. We were on the right side of the stat sheet, as I like to say, for midweeks because midweeks were doing us dirty. Mark, you got anything else on that one?
Yeah, I think it's something to be said about it being a midweek game because I think with a midweek game, what you typically see is not as good at pitching, which for us, our pitching was good. However, it's important that offensively we could take advantage of these teams when they may not have as deep of a pitching staff as us. They're trotting out some of their bottom guys, which are not as good as our bottom of the pitching order guys
Right.
in a lot of cases. And that's how you draw 9 walks, and that really was maybe the difference in the game. That we only walked them 3 times, they walked us 9 times. I mean, if you outwalk your opponent by 6, that really does help your chances to win a lot, and that's something you'll see in midweek games. And it was good that we to see also that we did hit enough to capitalize on that. Like you said, with Nate Early having a multi-hit game, Matt Rose having a multi-hit game, and I think that's maybe the biggest storyline for me is to see Matt Rose come in and get an opportunity to DH, which I think may be something that we'll see a little more going forwards. I know, and I thought to myself, oh, was this a platoon? Was this maybe a left-handed pitcher that started for Stetson? It wasn't. It was a right-handed starter. And with that, one thing to note is we love Eli Thomas. He's been doing fantastic as a freshman, but in the last week or so, he has been struggling at the plate. And
Yeah.
I think that it was good to give Matt Rose an opportunity here to step in. And you can't forget that Matt Rose led this team in batting average last year with a 319 batting average. He's also a senior, local guy that's been with the program now for this fourth straight year. I think there's a lot of good things about his game. He played third base for us in the past, second base for us in the past. Um,
He
Jack
even played
Lutz,
first. He even played first.
I, he can do it all. He can do it all. He's a Swiss Army knife. But I think that's something to monitor going forward is can Matt Rose get a little more involved with him and Eli split time? I'm not really sure how that's going to play out. That's for Coach Hannes to decide, but it's got to feel good for him to know that he does have someone as quality and as experienced and as good of a player as Matt Rose. So that was a nice takeaway from last night to see him get an opportunity and to do what he did. And other than that, I think we've already kind of shouted him out, but Jack Lutz, again, another good game, 3 walks. That's for a freshman. He's just a smooth, good ball player, and he continues to produce, which is great. One last note on this game would be that we did get to see Gabe Grello get a start, the highly touted freshman outfielder who had really only appeared in like one or two games before. Maybe he pinch ran a couple times as well, but to see him get four at bats here, actually go 1 for 4 with an RBI, with a double. I like the way he hits the ball. I like his just whole kind of demeanor in the box. I think that he looks like a pro. I think that he's going to be fun to watch if he can get a little more involved as the season goes on as well. I think there's potential for that. Other than that, I think that kind of wraps up that game. The next topic that we wanted to kick it to real quick is the AAC Power Rankings that Adam uh, put out earlier today. So I'll pull those up here on my end, and John, you can pull them up as well. So I'll read it real quick just for the listeners. But coming in at number one on Adam's power rankings, and again, I like the way he comes up with this. He's got a formula with different components of strength of schedule, team offense, team defense, record, things like that. So number one is Charlotte. Number two is UTSA. Number three is our Bulls. Number four, East Carolina. Number five, Wichita State. Number six, FAU. Number seven, UAB. Number eight, Rice. Number nine, Tulane. And number 10, Memphis. John, hearing that, looking at that, what are your thoughts?
I would probably say that they're definitely amongst my favorite rankings right now, or thus far. I think that our rankings didn't quite reflect like the eye test, right, early on, and I think that you see the same thing with like RPI and things like that. But um, you're starting to see teams like Wichita State, drop. I think they were number one in our first rankings. You're starting to see teams like ECU rise. Rice is dropping a little bit. Tulane's dropping. I don't know if that's going to last or not, but the biggest jump, in my opinion, and clearly not just my opinion, was Charlotte to number one. And everyone knows that I love to hate or hate to love Woody over in Charlotte. I think he does a great job, but I do not think that this jump is merited. I think that I think we ruffled some feathers on Twitter.
Some
And
literal feathers. I mean, it's the Roadrunners.
hey, yeah, I love that. There it is. Those aren't they flightless?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
that's unfortunate for them. But anyways, um, no. So I think that this is still UTSA's board, in my opinion. They had a great weekend this weekend in the tournament out in Houston. I think they swept and I don't think there's like a winner, but they go based off of record and things like that. So they won the weekend out in Houston out at the Astrodome or whatever they
yeah,
call
yeah.
it nowadays. But so yeah, I really think you're going to see some variation of those three teams in the top three. You've got us, Charlotte, and UTSA. I think that I think that UTSA brings depth. I think that they bring offense, and they have a great head coach. We love good head coaches on the show, and they make a huge difference at this level. We got three great head coaches going after it, and I think it's going to be a really, really exciting season. I mean, moving forward, but come American, things are going to get real gritty.
Yeah, I think that it's an interesting ranking. I think that I mean, who's to say that we shouldn't be higher, you know? I mean, we've done really well, 10-3. I think we have two more wins than Charlotte does. I mean, granted, they've played two less games than we have. But on different metrics, team metrics, I mean, our team ERA, a 3.37 is second best in the conference. Charlotte's is 4.05, which is also pretty good. Um,
That'll improve too as the season goes on. You can
Right.
quote me on that. Woody's gonna get it together.
Yeah. So they and then if you look at another one that's debatable, I think, is East Carolina being ahead of Wichita State because Wichita State has a 9-3 record. East Carolina is 6-5. I think that's another one that is debatable. But I think East Carolina is kind of being helped a little bit by strength of schedule. I don't think Wichita State has played um, anywhere near as challenging of a schedule as East Carolina, Charlotte, and a few other teams in the conference. So, and I think the bottom of the rankings, I think it really is kind of shaping out in a way that was kind of anticipated, I think, other than the fact that Tulane was initially more towards the higher end of the conference on the preseason rankings. So I think to see them at number 9 right now is a little bit surprising. Um, but yeah, those are kind of like my general thoughts. I think there's really only one team in the conference that has a losing record, which is pretty crazy. That's Memphis. Everybody else is either at 500 or is above 500, and that's a lot of that is attributed to the non-conference, especially if you're a Southern school, you're bringing in Northern schools that haven't maybe not even been able to play outdoors until they come travel south. So sometimes you get an easier schedule to start the year. But Tulane, Tulane does have a good record, so I don't think it necessarily indicates what they're going to be as a season. I think it's just hard to tell because their competition that they've faced thus far has been relatively weak. So we don't really necessarily know how good or not good they are. So that may be determined soon because there are they have a very interesting matchup this weekend, and I think that this would be a huge opportunity for Tulane to move up the rankings as they will be playing a series at TCU, number 17 ranked TCU this weekend. So they can tell Adam to stick it if they can win that series at TCU and propel themselves into the top 3 or 4 or 5 of the AAC rankings. Some other matchups that are going on this weekend for the for the American Conference that are noteworthy is that East Carolina is playing a series, or it could be one of those things where they go back and forth, but they're playing a series with Coastal Carolina, who's ranked number 16. And we also have, other than that, I would say those are the only two kind of like headliner series. I can quickly rattle off who the other teams are playing, and John, I'll let you just kind of see if anything else jumps out to you. But UAB is hosting Middle Tennessee State. Charlotte is hosting Radford. Wichita State is hosting West Georgia. Memphis is playing Missouri State. That's actually a good one because Missouri State's a CUSA team, Conference USA team that's done well in the NCAA tournament.
Did we
Uh,
talk about ECU Coastal?
well, I mentioned that it's happening. I didn't go into much detail about it, but yeah, I mentioned that it's happening. Yeah,
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed that. That's my fault.
yeah,
That's my
yeah.
bad.
And then
That's because that's gonna be really
F
exciting.
Um, FIU, FAU is a little South Florida matchup down there. Rice and Abilene Christian, and then UTSA and New Mexico State. So, like I said earlier, I think the two highlights are that Tulane is playing at TCU and that East Carolina is playing its Coastal. So, any thoughts on that, John?
Yeah, I mean, being from Texas, Abilene Christian doesn't have a bad program, and I'm pretty sure that that is a little bit of a rivalry there, like under the radar rivalry, just from like older matchups. FIU and FAU gets pretty ugly. FIU really, really wants to win this series, I can tell you that much. And um, Charlotte's got a little tournament that they should sleepwalk into. I think they've got Western Carolina, they got
Radford and one
Bradford,
other.
and yeah, there was and one other team, but yeah, no, not a whole. I don't know what the Lobos bring to the table in terms of baseball. Um,
They're 6-6.
what was their RPI last year?
I'm not sure, but being in the Conference USA, they're probably like in the hundreds, I would imagine.
Yeah, that's a good call. I didn't realize they were in Conference USA. Kind of a boring slate, to be honest. We're coming off of a weekend where we had
Yeah.
like three or five actually big like power tournaments where you featuring some of the best teams in the nation. And now I mean, the best tournament we got this weekend is headlined by Charlotte. So, womp womp.
Yeah, well, I think Tulane and TCU is interesting though, because their only knock on them thus far, like they do have a winning record as a team, but the only knock on them thus far really is the fact that they have played a really poor strength of schedule. But if they can go into a ranked Big 12 school and
Yeah,
win
absolutely.
that series, that destroys that narrative.
There's a
So
lot of people saying TCU are favored in the Big 12 to win the conference this year. And I also want to build on what you just said because when we were talking about the power rankings, I talked about Tulane being really low. I said that I think they're going to be moving up. I will say that Tulane will finish in the top five. They're
yeah,
they're what, 9 or 8 right now.
yeah.
Uh, I think that I can say, barring some major catastrophic injury breakout out there, I I'm very confident that they'll.
Well, they may not have to win this series at TCU, but they at least got to be competitive, at least go win a game, and at least look good in the other ones. That would be respectable. If they're able to do that, I think I would feel pretty good about them. If they just kind of get swept, or if they just don't look great in a couple games, I'd be a little worried that maybe they are going to be a bottom half team. But that will be we'll see how that plays out. But other than that, I think the last part of our show really just wanted to mention what's coming up for the Bulls. So a home series is coming up this weekend against Southern University. The scheduling is interesting because it looks like the game on Friday is at 5 p.m., which is a little earlier than normal. And then instead of playing on Saturday and Sunday, it looks like we're playing a double header on Saturday. Not exactly sure why. But that will be a little different. Saturday at 1 p.m. and then the second game would be after that. Just some background on Southern University. They they're a smaller school in Louisiana. I believe they're an HBCU. They play in I think it's called the MAAC or MEAC or SWAC. I forget which one exactly it is. But they generally the last several years have not been that successful as a program. Their RPI usually ends up being like 250 or below. Granted, anybody that you're going to play against, you have to get up for. These guys aren't going to come here just, to pass the time. They're gonna give their best effort against our Bulls, and they're gonna have to play. We're gonna have to play well all three games. But any thoughts on that?
Yeah, they got their first series win of the season this past weekend against Moorhead, and they're literally awful. Moorhead State is. But I think they got one kid that can swing it. His OPS is in like the 1200 range. I really don't know his name. I'm sure we will by the end of the weekend, but um, I really think that this one may have been the one that got added late because this one is kind of a question mark in terms of RPI. It's a question mark in terms of, strength of schedule, preparedness for conference play. They're not pitching the ball. Their team ERA is almost in the tens. Anything other than a sweep here is going to be very disappointing in my opinion, unless I'm just missing something glaring. But I don't think that we are. But what's going to be interesting to see how the dynamic plays out because I will say that it definitely positively contributed our series win against UCF, that doubleheader did. So it's going to be interesting to see if the underdog Jaguars can take advantage of those weird playing conditions playing that doubleheader. Last thing I will say about Southern University is I really, really dig their mascot. It's a swamp jaguar, dude. And if you ever see those things out in the Amazon taking out caimans, just like diving in the water, grabbing them by the neck. So that's my animal nerd moment for the day, and I'm gonna go watch some wildlife docs after this for sure.
Nice. Yeah, no, it'll be good. I think the doubleheader on Saturday is interesting, and it does, I guess, give everybody the opportunity to get to the last basketball game, home game of the season on Sunday. And obviously basketball is having a great season, just having clinched the regular season championship, so that it works out on that front. But other than that, I just wanted to wrap it up just to say, if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel or follow the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. That way you get the episodes right when they come out. Additionally, follow everybody on social media on Twitter, X. And I'll put obviously everybody's handles in the show description. But other than that, you can definitely start expecting us to drop some episodes twice per week. We'll try to keep them more at this length and cadence. But yeah, so I'll kick it to John with any last thoughts.
Yeah, I just want to circle back to the Southern University thing. Being a HBCU, I'm glad to see them get this kind of exposure because, with athletics, it's really tough with funding and things like that. So, like, for them to get this level of exposure, I hope that they take advantage of it and they give us a good run for our money. I'm hoping to see some competitive baseball, and also for our listeners, when you're liking, following, sharing, all of that good stuff, maybe we should start a poll on what our fans are thinking as well as far as the King of the Burbs versus ET Phone Home. I'll have to get with Adam and maybe we can put a poll together and see what the listeners think. But yeah, that's all I got, man.
I like that. Awesome. Well, thank you, John. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We will be back next week. And in the meantime, go Bulls.
Go Bulls.